Hello, hello, homeschool moms. This is Tauna Meyer with Proverbial Homemaker. I am your live keynote today. It has been a hot minute since I have done a Facebook Live, so I am just going to verify that it's working correctly. So if you guys can see me and hear me, please comment and just let me know you're here. I also have a poll for you at some point today, so we'll see if I can get that posted for you. So I'm going to sit here awkwardly in silence until I know that it's working. Oh, yeah. Okay, it looks like it's working just fine. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and get started. Like I said, my name is Tauna Meyer. I am a homeschool mom of 6. I have kids ranging from 6 years old to 15 years old, and I'm really excited to be able to share with you today about something that we have done from the very beginning, and that's year-round homeschooling. And day one of the Homeschool Mom Summer Summit is all about year-round homeschooling, so it's a good topic. Please comment and tell me if you have tried year-round homeschooling before, if that's something you're interested in doing this coming year. I'm just going to be chatting a little bit with you today about what year-round homeschooling is and what it looks like in our family, what it looks like this summer, because it changes a little bit from year to year, and just share some tips with you that I've learned along the way. And feel free anytime to ask comments or to ask questions in the comments, and I will, make sure that I make time to answer them. If I miss any, I will come back later and answer them. All right, so the first thing I kind of want to talk with you about is what year-round homeschooling is. A lot of times when I'm talking with other families and I mention that we do year-round homeschooling, their eyes get kind of big and they're like, I think they have this assumption that that means that we homeschool 24/7, 365, and we never take breaks and all that stuff. And none of that is true, of course. Nobody wants that. Of course, we all know that homeschooling is a lifestyle of learning, so really we're learning all year round. In that sense, we are really learning 24/7, 365. But that doesn't mean that lesson plans go all day, every day, or that we don't take breaks. We definitely do. I think generally speaking, what people mean when they say they do year-round homeschooling is that they don't follow the typical school schedule, the traditional school calendar, where they take summer completely off and take a week or two here and there for holidays and things like that. So what year-round homeschooling can look like varies greatly from family to family. We love year-round homeschooling. We love the flexibility that it offers. And the way we got started was a pretty natural way. We started homeschooling, and when we started, and still today, our whole homeschooling career, my husband has had an irregular schedule. And now it's a little bit more stable, but we still have Sundays and Mondays are our weekends. So we already kind of had a funky week that was different than, the school calendar as far as a weekly schedule. And so we naturally adjusted our homeschool to fit my husband's schedule and his needs. And then it kind of expanded, and we realized we want to take vacations on times where it makes most sense to us. We don't want to do it during the summer. We are true Oregonians. We don't like things really hot. So when things get really hot outside, we do our lessons. And when the weather is beautiful and the perfect temperature, that's when we go outside and play. And we like to take our vacations in October. And, September, October, not only is everybody else back to school, but the weather in Oregon is just gorgeous and beautiful. So it made sense for us to adjust our homeschool around that. So we actually tend to take a lighter approach in the fall than any other time of year, which is great because we can kind of roll into our homeschooling routine and enjoy the beautiful weather in Oregon. So we started with that sort of approach. First, we had this irregular week and we worked around my husband's schedule, which makes sense. And then we took vacations when we wanted. And then we were thinking, we want to have more time off for Christmas and, to be able to do, set academics aside and enjoy more activities like, countdowns to Christmas or countdowns to Easter and do special Bible studies and activities together. and really enjoy those times, because we don't have very many of those holidays before pretty soon the kids are out of the house. So we want to take more time than a traditional calendar would allow us to enjoy those holidays and experiences. And then there's the fact that real life happens when we have a big change in our family, like when a baby was added, or when a elderly parent moved in and needed care, or when there was a move, when we moved to a different neighborhood or a different town. All of those things are really big events. And instead of letting it completely disrupt everything, we just adjust it around it. We can put things on hold and slow things down, knowing that we have the whole rest of the year as buffer for that, so we don't have to stress out about it. And that's really a blessing for me, especially when I had babies that were coming every 2 years. It was a blessing to be able to just adapt things and adjust things without so much stress. And then there's also the times where we have, where everything in the household is sort of falling apart. The house is a mess, and I realize our routines need to be addressed. And that happens a couple times a year. Less and less as time goes on, because we've gotten used to being able to tighten things up when we need to. But especially in the beginning, it was very often. And now it's still a couple times a year when everything's kind of a disaster, and I realize we really need to focus on our habits and routines. And I can slow our homeschool down, or do a light week for school, and focus on getting our house in order, getting back on our routines, getting back into our chore rotations, all of those kind of things. Because if we don't tend to those, it tends to fall apart after a while. That's pretty normal. So it's nice to be able to just slow down and focus on our routines and get our things organized and cleaned as much as possible. If you guys know me at all, I'm I'm not a very good housekeeper, and I'm not very good at keeping organized, but I want to keep things clean and organized enough to where we can go on about the business of homeschooling and discipleship. And, within 30 minutes, maybe we can get the house in order if we have company coming over. Those are my goals. That's kind of my litmus test for how we're doing. So if I realize it's just a complete chaos, then we will take a week and just focus on that. And that's okay. That's part of life too. The other time when we do that, which is a time I really like year-round homeschooling for, is when we need to focus on character. There are times when we might have 1 or 2 kids, and it seems to come in bundles. So, often it has to do with obedience or attitude or, diligence, things like those, or being kind to each other, using kind, sweet words, where we realize we need to stop what we're doing academically and focus on this. And so we'll do that. We'll take the time we need to go to scripture together, to really practice our habits and how we speak to each other and how we behave. And we will make that a part of the homeschool experience and the family discipleship experience as a priority, because it really is. It's important that we, treat each other well and focus on character when we need to. So we love year-round homeschooling for that reason. It is flexible. It adapts to our needs. It helps me as a mom to be able to adjust things in our schedule when needed to, handle what our family needs in that moment without stressing out all the time about, are we going to get the math done or whatever? Because I've learned over the years, we've been doing this now, I've been homeschooling now for 12 years, is that as behind as I might feel in certain subjects, it's fine. It's fine. There's plenty of time for us to get to where we need to be. So that's not really something I worry about anymore. I need to focus on the things that are most important for our family. So we get a lot of opportunities to, slow down and focus on character, focus on our routines, go on vacations when we need to, go on breaks when we need to. There are times when I'm like, you know what, this mama just needs a day, needs a day off. And, then my kids think I'm a superhero because I just called off school for the day. So those are okay things to do. And year-round homeschooling, I feel like, kind of gives me the breathing room that I need to be able to do that guilt-free. And that's always helpful for me. It also gives us opportunities to explore rabbit trails when we want to. There have been times when when one kid or maybe a set of kids gets really interested in something in particular, and I don't want to miss those opportunities. And so we get the time and the space in our year to explore those rabbit trails. Like I had this last year in the fall, actually, my all my younger kids, basically all of them except for my oldest, my high schooler, and even he joined in sometimes then, they just became obsessed again with Boxcar Children. And so they would say, "Oh, Mom, we're going to play Boxcar Children today." And they would get the book out and remind themselves of some of the details, and they would go outside in their, play structure little clubhouse thingy, and they would set up the whole Boxcar Children thing, and they would bring out food and cut up food and prepare a meal, mimicking what the Boxcar Children were doing, and they would put windows up all over the thing. They turned this thing into their little Boxcar Children world, and they loved it so much, and they learned things in the process. And they would come and ask me questions about different aspects of the story, and we would, research them online together, and then they would go out and mimic that in their play. And they did that for 3 weeks solid, where we just did a light school for that week, for those 3 weeks of, Bible and math and, a couple other things here and there, so that they could spend their time doing their Boxcar Children time. They really enjoyed that. Or sometimes, we'll go on a walk or something, or they'll be having a conversation with a friend or family member, and some topic will come up, and they'll, express interest in learning more about it. And so we'll go off and research where rainbows come from, or we'll go off and research, how birds build nests, things like that, or some time in history that Grandpa was telling him about. And so we get time to pursue those things, and those are the most memorable lessons that they could possibly have. Those are the things that they're going to cherish and remember. Those are the family times we're going to cherish and remember. And so I love that year-round homeschooling gives us the breathing room and the space to be able to pursue those things that matter most, and those rabbit trails that are memory makers for our homeschool. So I definitely, it's something that's a huge blessing to us. It's not the best way to homeschool. So I'm going to throw that out there. There are many ways to homeschool. There are many schedules and routines. The trick is just to find what works best for you and your family. As far as like what a typical day might look like for our family, that was one question I was asked to kind of share about. I almost laughed out loud. I'm like, I'm not sure there's a typical day. There are, I suppose, when we're really into our school routines, when things are really going in the late fall and in the winter, we have our full load homeschool weeks and homeschool days. And during those times, we cover our main subjects, and then everything else we kind of rotate through using loop scheduling, which I'll explain a little bit more later. But we also have light homeschool days and weeks for the reasons that I just mentioned. We want to focus on character, or we want to take a break, or we want to focus on our routines, or whatever it might be, or things are just really crazy busy with outside activities, or whatever it might be. So we have our regular loads, and then my kids actually call it, are we doing light homeschool today? If they know we have lots of appointments, or if, it's basketball season and it's a busy day or whatever. And light homeschool days for us just means we focus on the most important things, which are Bible, and then we like to try to keep going, at least in the right direction, with math and then reading. And that includes reading aloud, and at least each of my kids doing some reading on their own or reading practice, depending on where they are with that developmentally. So those are the 3 things that we try to make steady progress with, even on light homeschool days: Bible, math, and reading. Everything else, all the other core subjects, we'll tackle on our full homeschool days, and I don't worry too much about those. And then everything else after that, we rotate through and touch on 1 or 2 of those subjects every day, just so that we can make progress. Um, we also have weeks. So I am one of those homeschool moms that gets antsy. I was just talking to a friend of mine at church, and she just laughs every time I say, I'm just kind of tired of doing this. I get antsy. It's almost like homeschool mom ADD, where I'm like, I'm kind of bored with what's happening right now, and I want to do something different. And so I'll bring in, holidays are great for that because I can bring in different little unit studies or lessons that we can do or special studies. Like I said, the Christmas or Easter countdown activities, or we might switch out and do a different Bible study for a couple weeks on a topic that I feel like is important for our family to address. We might do things like those rabbit trails I mentioned, especially in the spring and summer. My kids love to do things like butterfly units or birds, learning about birds in their nests. Or I might pull out a bundle of, back when we first started homeschooling, we did before 5 in a row and 5 in a row. And I loved that curriculum. It was so much fun. And nowadays I still have all those books, and they're beautiful, wonderful, life-giving books. And so I'll often just say, we're just going to spend this week going through these books. And we don't do all the activities necessarily, but I might recall a few from the curriculum that we did before, and we'll do those. But we just spend time enjoying these beautiful children's literature books, and then we'll go find ways to engage with those books in our everyday life somehow. And like I said, it also helps to accommodate big life changes like new babies or moving or whatever. So this year, we're in the summer months already, and I just wanted to give you kind of a glimpse of what it looked like for us this year, because I mentioned at the beginning it changes from year to year. So our homeschool year, it was a pretty good year. We were fairly, we were consistent enough, basically. Consistent enough. If you haven't watched my session yet, it's today, I think it went live today, on how to homeschool consistently and when it matters and when it doesn't, then I definitely recommend watching that. I really learned a lot over these several years about how to homeschool consistently and when to just let go of that entirely and not worry about whether I'm homeschooling consistently, because there is a balance there. This year we were consistent enough. I feel like we got done what we needed to get done, and it was fine. We didn't finish all of our curriculum, and that's okay. I don't think we've ever finished all of our curriculum except for maybe math, and even then we do it at our own pace. So it's okay to not finish your curriculum. If you need to hear that today, if you are feeling like, oh, I need to spend my summer finishing this curriculum, finishing this history curriculum or the science curriculum, no, you don't. You don't. Even in public schools, they don't finish the curriculum all the way. So there's not that we're trying to mimic public school, but there's no reason to try to hold ourselves to at a standard, or what should I say, like a milestone that's irrelevant. I feel like if we finish 50 to 75% of the curriculum and it was useful and good and helpful for us, then that was a win. I feel like, my money was well spent because we used it as a tool and I wasn't, a slave to the curriculum. And so we got good use out of it. And I feel like it served its purpose, and now I can move on with my life. I don't need to finish the curriculum. So you just kind of have to realize that curriculum is a tool, and it's not, your curriculum isn't homeschooling your children, you are. Curriculum is just one of the tools to be able to teach our children what we need to teach them. So this year, anyway, getting back, that was kind of a rabbit trail in itself, but this year we were consistent enough. We did what we needed to do. This summer, last summer was crazy. We had so many things going on. This summer is a little bit more calm. My oldest has a couple of camps he's doing, but otherwise, other than a big camping trip in August, we're kind of laying low, and that's kind of nice for a change. So what we're going to be doing is we're continuing with our Bible curriculum, Bible study that we're doing, and we're going to wrap up the New Testament right about the time we start the new homeschool year, which is good because then we'll roll into Old Testament right when we're picking up world history. We're just finishing up American history now, or we already finished. And then, so we're going to finish our Bible study for the year, which is just mostly just reading the Bible together and discussing it together. Then we have a few literature read alouds that we didn't get to during the year that I kind of, I was like, oh, I really wanted to read Mr. Popper's Penguins with the Kids again, or, I really wanted to read this other book, but we kind of camped out in Little Men for so long which has been wonderful, but I want to finish those other read alouds because they're just fun. So we're going to do a couple of read alouds and audiobooks as we can fit them in through the summer. We're also going to alternate some fun history videos with a little plant science unit that I picked up because my kids are really into gardening right now and they went out and made their own gardens. So it made sense to kind of work that in. It will be light and fun. A couple of my kids are going to continue with their math. And one of my kids uses a dyslexia therapy program online and he really enjoys it. So we're just going to continue through that in the summer. Now, my high schooler, he has a very busy social life, but I do let him decide to some degree what to tackle over the summer. So he's decided that he wants to just keep going through his math and sort of finish it up by the time, finish up his Algebra 1 by the time the end of the summer hits. And he can do that. He's almost done. So he can do that at a pretty leisurely pace over the summer. He doesn't want to have to worry about doubling up anything next year, which is fine. So I gave him the option. That's what he wants to do. He also has a couple literature books that we never really got around to during the year that I feel like are really valuable. So he's just going to read them and we'll just discuss them. He'll narrate to me every so often and we'll just talk about them. And then the other thing is he wants to try out CLEP testing for college credit. So he's just wrapping up his biology unit with Apologia or his biology year. And so he's going to try to do some study for the CLEP test and give that a try and see if that's an avenue he wants to pursue going forward for earning college credit for other subjects too. So that's kind of our plan for the summer. It will take an hour tops for almost all of us. It will probably take my oldest maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours if he does a bunch of reading with his books too. And it won't be most days. It will be probably 3 to 4 days on a good week, on a solid week. In other weeks, it might be just 1 or 2 days, and that's fine. And we'll just enjoy our time together. We have plans to go to the river a lot and go to the lake a lot and try to train our dog to be nicer. All of those fun things for the summer. So we love the flexibility of year-round homeschooling. Every year looks a little bit different. We keep our summers light in order to enjoy our time together because that's really what matters most in our homeschool is our relationships with each other and making memories together. I want my kids to love homeschooling and love our time together and love learning. And there's a balance sometime with the academics, but we found that spreading things out over the year is actually helpful to us. And it's life-giving to us, and it brings us flexibility and breathing room that gives us a space to be able to enjoy our families together. It's also really helpful because we can easily roll back into our normal load after our, we take a light summer, we take a light fall, we take a lot of light times, and that's okay. We love the weather in the fall, like I said at the beginning, and so when things start to look kind of yucky, we add one subject at a time until we get to our normal full load. And it's just easier than doing a full stop and a full start. Anytime I've done a full stop and a full start, it's like pulling teeth, for me and the kids. So we just don't like those times as much as just easy roll in. There are some downsides to year-round homeschooling. There's not many, to be honest, that I've found. But if you're like me and you tend to be a minimalist planner or maybe even no plans if possible, which is harder to do in the high school years. I've definitely been doing more planning with my oldest going into high school. But if you're like me and you're kind of loosey-goosey and you get distracted by things and you like to change things up, sometimes the downside with year-round homeschooling is it's easy to forget that time moves like this and things will move faster than you expected and the end of the year will sneak up on you and that summer is actually really short. So you make all these amazing plans for the year, amazing plans for the summer, and then you realize it goes like that and you didn't do most of the stuff you wanted to do because you thought you had all the time in the world. So if you want to stay intentional, a more fluid schedule might actually make that harder. And there's a couple things you can do. One thing is like impossible for me, but I'm going to throw it out there for you type A people, is that it's to schedule things out more and to be more planned and more measured. I'm kind of thinking that Richie actually might be really good at this. So maybe you could ask her, but if you want to plan things out more, to get more done and to have things scheduled out more, that could be one way to approach that. And that may be something that you have to do if your state laws require things like a number of days or a certain number of hours or certain subjects. You might have to pick up some of those habits too. I personally like loose dates and slower paces. And so here's what I do to help me with this situation. The first thing is when you ask a year-round homeschooler, when does your school year end? They always say, oh, it never ends. I do year-round homeschooling. Well, it's kind of true, but for us, we do treat fall as the beginning of the homeschool year, even though we're schooling all year round. And we treat June like the end of the year. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is when I think that way for curriculum planning purposes, it means I get to take advantage of curriculum sales and things because those tend to naturally happen at the beginning and ending of the year. So by sort of keeping that in mind, I can take advantage of those curriculum sales and not be totally caught off guard, and pay full price in the middle of the year, which I still do sometimes, but it's nice to be able to take advantage of those sales. The other thing is for celebrations. My kids love celebrating things, and so having a beginning of the year celebration and an end of the year celebration, even if they're super simple, like our local support group for homeschooling has a ice cream social at the beginning and ending of the year. So we do that. And sometimes to celebrate the beginning of the homeschool year, when everybody goes off to school, we'll go out to breakfast in our pajamas or something like that, or give them a little gift of an audiobook to celebrate the new year. Something to just celebrate. And so treating the beginning and ending of the year. And it also helps my kids to kind of say, okay, I finished the school year, even if we're still doing math or still doing whatever, I've transitioned to the next grade level. And grade level is really only important when you're having conversations with people who don't homeschool, but they found it helpful to know what grade they're in, So that's the first thing we do. We treat fall as the beginning of the year and June as the end of the year. The second thing I do is I do planning and goals on a quarterly basis rather than year long. We homeschool moms get to the beginning of the homeschool year, which is usually, we start thinking about it right about now, and especially in August and September. But a year is too long to plan for, okay? Because a lot can happen in a year, and I get distracted after a few months anyway. So instead of doing a year, I can sort of look back on the year and look forward and kind of make general goals and plans and process things. But when it comes to managing my year and my time and what we're doing, I do things quarterly. So I will look at the upcoming quarter and I just do it by season. So it's fall and I'm looking forward in the fall. What are the things we want to accomplish in the fall? Do we want to focus more on a certain character trait? Do we want to change up our, Bible study for the quarter? Do we want to take on a fun extra activity? Do I want to focus this fall on science and maybe in the winter we'll focus on history? I can do what I want. You don't, you can do what you want. You don't have to fit in science and history every single day or other subjects, art and music. You can pick months or seasons where you just focus on that thing and do a deep dive into it if you want, and then move on to something the next year. Or the next quarter. So I'll look at the quarter and kind of give myself an idea of what is it that I kind of want to do. Where do I feel God leading us this quarter? Where do I feel like we should focus our time? Do we want to focus on our routines during the fall, which is often the case, whatever it is. And then the third thing I do is I set check-in times. So for myself, not for my kids. So at the end of the quarter, I actually have a reminder on my phone or on my calendar saying check quarterly goals. And I'll say, okay, what do I want to do this next quarter? And that is a much more manageable, practical way for me to kind of keep on task and make sure that the end of the year just doesn't totally catch up to me. And it kind of feeds my my tendency to get easily distracted. It helps me to focus on the things I need to focus on and to change things up when I want to, so we don't get stuck in a rut. And it helps me to thoughtfully make adjustments to our homeschool and discipleship plans based on what my family needs and what my children need. So it's super easy. Basically, you could start now deciding what you want to do for the summer or for the fall. Make a really quick note somewhere about just the things you want to focus on. Put a reminder on your phone or calendar to check it at the end of the quarter. And over time, you'll realize that's much easier to manage than a whole year of, get to the end of the year and you realize you didn't do anything you wanted to do. And then the fourth thing I do is I manage my priorities and rotate everything else. And I've kind of already touched on this, but I have learned that, as loosey-goosey as I can be, I have things that are important that we want to focus on. We want to focus on scripture and the Bible. So we want to make reading and discussing the Bible a priority in our home, and memorizing God's word together. We want to make sure that we're making general progress when it comes to the skills work, like language arts and math, the things that your kids have to do kind of on their own, not as a group work. And then everything else can be brought in for special seasons or on a rotating basis. We use loop scheduling a lot, and I said I would mention that and go in a little bit more detail. You can go to proverbialhomemaker.com and look up loop scheduling, and you'll find free templates and a loop scheduling workshop and some videos and all sorts of things about how I use loop scheduling in our homeschool and in my homemaking even, and actually in everything. I'm kind of a loop schedule person. It works for how I work. But in homeschooling, it's been a blessing because I never fall behind on those other things, all the other things like art and music and, special studies and all these things that tend to fall through the cracks because they're on my loop schedule. So, each day we'll do the most important things, our Bible, our math, our reading, and then we'll make sure we touch on something in the loop schedule, just the next thing, and we'll rotate through it as we go. And then when we get to the bottom, we'll get back to the top. That's the basic idea. And I do that myself with our group work and our routines. And my kids, my older kids, about grades 3 and up, they each have their own. So, my 5th grader has things that she works on every day, and then she does the next thing on her loop schedule. The next day she does her daily things, and then the next thing on the loop schedule. And it helps us just to move forward in those subjects and not worry if the day or the week falls apart, because we'll just pick up where we left off. So that is a way to really, approach a flexible homeschool without so much stress of trying to get everything done all the time. Okay, so I'll look through your questions here in a little bit. My main thing, if you are just getting started with year-round homeschooling, this is actually the perfect time for it because you can dabble with it for the summer. You can pick 1 or 2 subjects, like maybe Bible and math, or Bible and a fun summer activity or unit study, and you can just dabble with it throughout the summer, and don't worry if it's not completely consistent all the time. You have a summer to enjoy with your children. And then when you start to roll into the fall, start adding 1 subject at a time. So it's a really great time to start that. Okay, let's see. This seems very adaptable to homesteading and farming, especially. Yes, it would be, because, especially I don't homestead or farm, but I'm imagining it. And that would be a wonderful way to do it, just with all the seasons that you go through and all the, thinking of baby animals coming into the world and spending the time to pause and work on that, or harvest season. And that would be wonderful and beautiful. I love the idea of homeschooling year-round. May have to try it this year. Yeah, it's a fun thing to try. Just keep it fun. It doesn't mean necessarily, I think I used to approach it like I've got to catch up with academics. If you are feeling like you need to catch up with academics, that there's a time and a place for that. There are some times when that's needed, but I think most of the time when homeschool moms feel like they have to catch up with academics, that is a false pressure that we put ourselves under. Many times we can adapt the material to meet our children's needs rather than trying to slog through it and finish it through the summer. So just, I think the main thing would just be to prayerfully think through what needs to be done here in order to educate my child well and to get them where they need to be. Can I adapt it rather than trying to catch up through the summer and, beat a dead horse, so to speak, if it's something they don't really need to push through. Even with math. Math is kind of the one where I feel like we do need to generally stay on track. But with math, if I feel like my kids are behind, usually they're the ones that feel like they're behind because, they're like, well, I'm not on the level that so-and-so is on. And I'm always like, just don't worry about it. If we need to, we can double up on things. We can cross problems out. We can skip the quizzes. I'm with you. I know what you're learning and what you've mastered. We don't need to worry about the quizzes and the tests. We can just work through the problems together. So there are ways to get to where your child needs to be without having to push them prod them through every single math lesson and every single problem. Let's see. Light school, yeah. Suzanne says we're in a light school month here too. School light, diet school. Yeah. Yeah, my kids love it when I say, oh, it's light school day. They're like, yay. Yeah, the other thing that I've heard parents say is if you are a family that participates in other activities during the summer, especially if you participate with other public school kids, sometimes parents just prefer to have their summer set aside for those things. And that's totally fine. Like I said, there's no one right way to do it. If it's something that you think you might be interested in, then it's worth trying. Katie says, which dyslexia program do you use? We use Lexercise for my son for reading and spelling, and it has been really wonderful. We were using a spelling curriculum before and reading curriculum that was also wonderful and really helped him to take off, but then he kind of hit a wall with making some of the connections when he wasn't using the curriculum. And so we ended up enrolling him in this other thing, and it's been really good for him. I actually have a video coming on that soon. Let's see. Melissa says, I'm the one who needs to finish the curriculum, although I do it with flexibility. Yeah, you don't have to do it according to the schedule. You can adjust the schedule to fit your needs, right? That's true. You can always adapt it. Somebody asked, do you combine your curriculums you get for your children? So for us, we do history together and science and art and music and nature study all together. When my kids start getting into late middle school, then they start to pick up their own science if they want to. And in high school, they definitely do their own science track. And but for everything else, other than the skills-based things like language arts and reading and, well, obviously reading is part of language arts, reading, writing, and math, basically, they will do their own track. But everything else, we do a lot of group work together and combine it. When doing year-round homeschool, do you use a loop schedule or something else? Yes, we do use a loop schedule. It is really helpful. And sometimes, like I said, that could be rotating through topics, during the day, like a different topic each week on our loop schedule. Sometimes it means, we're going to focus on science this month, and then next month we're going to focus on history, and then we'll go back and forth. We've done that alternating weeks. We've done it alternating months. We've done, last year we did history almost every single day. We've done various things, just whatever fits our current needs, and all of them work pretty well. Let's see. Okay, I think I caught all the questions. Let me know if you guys have any other questions about year-round homeschooling. Really, it's just a super flexible way for you to adapt your year and your materials and your time to fit your family's needs, to be more relaxed with it, to give yourself the breathing room and the space to be able to enjoy your time together as a family and get the things that are most important finished. All right, you're the boss of your homeschool. Use your time and resources to your advantage and to teach them a way that best fits your family's needs and just enjoy your time together. Okay, if you have any more questions, feel free to comment and I'll come back to them later. Be sure to, don't forget to get the lifetime VIP pass if you want to have access to this session or to my Homeschooling Consistently talk, all the other amazing sessions and speakers, all the other bonuses going forward. I left a link for you. I'll also leave a link for you to the loop scheduling stuff if you guys are interested in learning more about that. I hope this was helpful to you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful week with the Homeschool Mom Summer Summit. Bye-bye.